Welcome to the Inside Zone. What's up, guys? Look, this has been a amazing year so far in terms of college football in general. Look, we just came out of the 12-team playoff. We just, as far as the first week, and we learned a lot. A lot of it, I think, a lot of folks on social media and in the news media has had the mindset of "I told you so, I told you so." Um, as to be expected, right? A lot of people felt that opening it up to smaller schools that you don't traditionally see competing for championships, the SMUs, the Boise States, and things like that, was going to create a very lopsided um, set of games, and it did. Um, I think the biggest thing to kind of keep in mind was home field advantage played a big part in some of the games this weekend, as you saw with SMU's quarterback couldn't hear. Penn State was loud and crazy as those fans normally are. The SMU, I think, crowd capacity at their home stadium is like 30,000. Penn State has 100,000 plus in their stadium. Ohio State was a clear advantage. Notre Dame was a clear advantage over Indiana in terms of uh, uh, being at the home crowd. That's the first thing I noticed. The home crowds played a major part with these teams this weekend. Uh, Overall, regardless of how you felt about the games, blowouts, nonetheless, the biggest thing I think you have to take away from it was the anticipation. This is the first year, and I think everybody was just excited on Friday to see football, competitive football, and just see what was going to happen. Right? It's like watching Mike Tyson versus Jake Paul. You tuned in because you wanted to see, you know, good, bad, or ugly, what was going to happen. Same thing here, right? You wanted to see what was gonna happen, how the competition was going to be, um, and that's that. So I think the blowouts were clearly the biggest negative for these guys for the games. Um, Look, everybody wants competition. I think, yeah, as a Georgia fan, watching Georgia go to 8 overtimes or have to win by a field goal, or miss field goal against Ohio State, or even losing in the last seconds to Tua Tagovailoa in the last second heave. I think that goes a long way, right? I think that creates a sense of excitement and heart pounding and New Year's Eve, game winning, all that good stuff. We didn't get that this weekend. It was pretty much business as usual, right? Um, Penn State, Ohio State, Notre Dame. I may be missing the game. I can't remember, but those teams seemed like the moment wasn't too big for them. They were ready for it. They were ready to play, and the blue blood programs won as we expected. Right? They were supposed to win. The smaller programs, although Tennessee is not necessarily a small program, they were outclassed. Ohio State was clearly ready, and Tennessee wasn't. Um, Travel, right? Kids are getting out of school. This is the Christmas holiday, right? This is, you know, all the public schools are out. If they're not out, they're out this week, through the end of the year, right? Same thing for the colleges. All these kids are leaving, packing up their dorm rooms, leaving out of college, going back home, and or they're in final exams and for the semester trying to finish things up. And what do you know? We have the biggest game of the year. Oh yeah, and by the way, we have to travel. So that poses a little bit of an issue for the college game. It's not like pros where the games are held in the same cities over and over again. This is the situation where the way the playoffs are seeded and the way where you have to travel, it all depends on what happens in the last week or so of the season. And you could be, if you're a Penn State fan, you could have easily been in Pennsylvania, or you could have had to travel to Texas. So the travel was definitely a challenge. I would assume, for some, not for Tennessee, so to speak. Even though Tennessee showed up, the fans showed up, the players didn't. Um, I think overall, the 12-team playoff will need to be adjusted. Um, in terms of not who gets in, but I think just the seeding once teams get in, right? I think the fact that Oregon was clearly the number one team throughout the year, they have the toughest road to a championship. As a Georgia fan, I think I think it's good because Georgia had to go through that gauntlet through the year. I think it's only right if Oregon is going to win the title, they should have to go through a gauntlet as well. Um, to get to a championship. But I do think some of the lower the teams like SMU and Indiana, or even a Boise State, Boise State and Arizona State. I mean, when you look at their strength of schedule, who they had to play, I think that's a tough one. That's a tough sell for me for these guys to be seated as high as they're seated. And some will say, "Hey, look, you line up, you play the team, you play the games, you play whoever they put in front of you, and you don't complain about it." Okay. But nonetheless, I think the excitement of the games. I think the games will be a little bit tighter. I think this week we have then the next round we have Georgia Notre Dame, which is going to be a good one. Those teams are pretty similar in the trenches. Georgia is missing their starting quarterback, which could be a positive, which is the weird thing. And Notre Dame is coming off of a big win. Momentum is in their corner, so that's going to be interesting as well to see how that all plays out and see where things land going forward as far as competitively. Let's see, what do we have next? We have Penn State, Boise State. Penn State, Boise State on New Year's Eve. That's going to be a big one, right? Can Boise State running game stand up to the Penn State defensive line? It's going to be just basically, it's going to be bare bones, right? It's going to be, can a ground and pound team like Boise stand up to the Big Ten and the Big Ten talent and the Big Ten, hogs down there in the middle on the defensive side of the ball. And that's what it's going to come down to. It's not going to be pretty, but I think it's going to be, if the game goes how I think it's going to be Boise struggling to run the ball, and it's going to be Penn State just winning an ugly one against Boise. Period. Georgia, Notre Dame, I think you're going to see two teams that are fairly equally lined up as far as offensive lines go. Notre Dame is going to try to run it down Georgia's throat, and that Georgia defense, which is the best in the country in my opinion, is going to have to stand up. And the prayer is going to be for the second string quarterback for the Bulldogs to not make a ton of mistakes. That's what it's going to come down to. If that kid Gunnar Stockton makes mistakes, if he throws bad interceptions, he could very well be the guy to keep Georgia out of winning this game. Texas, Arizona State. Don't know a ton about Arizona State. I'll tell you this. They were projected to be last in their division coming into the year, and they end up going 11-2. I think Texas is going to probably score 78 on these guys. It's not going to be pretty. I think this is probably the biggest mismatch going into the New Year Day games. The best game, I think, aside from Georgia and Notre Dame, is going to be Ohio State, Oregon. That's going to be a monster game. Ohio State has momentum after beating Tennessee, and Oregon is the best team in the country, just sitting there waiting for their opponent to show up. So that's going to be a heck of a game. I think, we'll have to see. Will Dan Lanning have his players ready to go? Will Ryan Day have his players ready to go? It's going to be a knockdown, drag-out fight. We'll look to see what happens, man. This was just want to do a quick video, quick recap of the weekend. And let me know what you guys think. And like, share, subscribe. And we'll see you on the next video.